Raiders hammer.
Good work.
Can anybody do a loud whistle? No? Hey! That was what I used, his voice. My crew said, man, your voice is loud. I said, shut up and listen to it. Put your belly aching and go train. We train, well, almost every shift on 9/11. I didn't give it's the best thing to keep your workforce from sniveling and bitching is just to make them train all the time. Because they don't have time to do anything else then. We kind of looked through all the stuff, all the equipment that led to all the training, but basically, we stopped evaluating or training on hose lathes, ground ladders, all of that. I mean, once in a while we do it just to do it. But everything that we did over a 2-year period was all rapid intervention training. And again, man, it didn't work at 35th Avenue, so we wanted it to work and we were going to make it work. So that's all we did for over 2.5 years was packaging firefighters, air transfills, and Mayday operations. So we're about 2 years in, this is the very end. This December was the first drill. I said, okay, we invested all this money and time in it, let's start doing a set of drills, and let's evaluate the drills to see how we're doing. The first drill was in December of 2002, and they lasted almost 9 months. And they were for the whole valley-wide system, 30 automatic aid fire departments. So we had 3 drill sites spread out throughout the valley, and they would come in on first alarms. So every company that came in had an evaluator, facilitator that would document a certain set of stuff. And the matrix that they were using to document our activities is we contracted with ASU, Arizona State, and it was the industrial hygienist. Not hygienist. See, that's what I was, industrial hygiene. But whenever I heard industrial hygiene, I always thought that that's where the smokers or the bad teeth people went to go get their teeth cleaned, to an industrial hygienist. I didn't know that they were actual just statisticians and bean counters. Don't call them that though. So it was Dr. Perry, he was a PhD, he was the chair in charge of that section of the college. We contracted with him to develop these matrix sheets, and then for his department to take all of these evaluation sheets and then to correlate it with data. So he used 8 other people in his department, and they were getting either their master's degree or their PhD in industrial hygiene, and they used this study as their thesis. So what we did is, all of those things we'd stick in a banker's box after the drill was over. So about 3 drills would fill 1 banker box. So after 9 months of drills are done, I think we did over 400 drills. It was, the whole valley has almost 300 engine companies. There's about just under 100 truck companies, 1 million ambulances. So it's like one gigantic fire department. So in order to get everybody through that, all these banker boxes filled up a semi, and we sent them off to ASU and Dr. Perry's industrial hygiene department. And it took them about 4 or 5 months to correlate all the data, and never do this on a drill because we were living in a fantasy. Phantom company. So the drill was structured where they would play act the first alarm radio traffic, where 2 people were doing it. Is there any competing radios with 2 people? It's not like 8 portables are on the scene. So you can pull that off with 2 people play acting this whole first alarm deployment. So the drill companies would come in there as a second alarm, and as they're play acting all this radio traffic, they would assign us to RIC position around this drill site. The drill had 2 firefighters. One was down unconscious. The other one was like Tarver when he first called his mayday. He was CO'd up, running around the structure. So the companies were deploying as RIC teams. One would have to package up a down firefighter. The other companies would have to find the roving firefighter, get him under control, and get him out of the building. So there were no interior companies in there other than the 2 firefighters that were down. The rescue again was outside in. It was, I got a mayday, bonk, send in the RIC crews. We used the RIC branch, the whole 9 yards. I mean, we kept practicing our RIC routine because it didn't work at 35th Avenue. So Dr. Perry comes back 6 months later. Does anybody know our ops chief, Steve Price? He kind of was out there. Steve Price, they call him Chief Novocaine. Well, they call him Captain Novocaine, Chief Novocaine, Assistant Chief Novocaine, because he had no affect in his voice whatsoever. So Dr. Perry sends him this 300-page document. He said, this is a very large document. You want me to read this whole thing? He says, no, Chief, just go to the last 3 or 4 pages where the summaries are. Okay. So he reads this. And if you add all these up, 21 minutes, 12 firefighters to rescue 1 in 5 experienced Mayday. So he's looking at it. He picks up the phone. He calls budget. Cancel Dr. Perry's check. We wasted 6 months and $250,000. Click. Well, Dr. Perry calls him up on his check balances. And I don't believe your information. We've been doing this for 2 years. There's no way. It takes 21 minutes to get down a firefight. That's all we've been practicing. This is obscene what you've done to this department. You've made a mockery out of it. Dr. Perry wants his $250,000. So he shows up and he has a meeting with the senior staff where he has to educate them. This number right here is for the down unconscious firefighter. Dr. Perry explains, if I would have put the person who was on CO running around, half the time you never even found them in the building. So how do I document that? And then half the time that they did find them, their rescue times were obscenely long. So what we did is it skewed the stats so much as we just eliminated that whole scenario out of it. And you did this 600 times, and we can base solid numbers on those 600 packaging. So this is just for an unconscious firefighter. So he goes through the whole deal, and finally he makes everybody realize that he, in fact, deserved his PhD, and then they paid him his $250,000. But after he left, what did Chief Price say? He's the one who coined the phrase in our fire service. Well, Chief Bruno is saying, apparently rapid intervention isn't rapid. Do we grossly overestimate our capabilities? So 12 firefighters to rescue 1 down firefighter, 1 in 5 experienced a Mayday. So, how many is that?
2 every time.
2. So now I need to send in 12 more? Well, actually 24 more. 12 for this one and 12 for that one. It's almost like it pies itself, isn't it? To where when am I going to stop just sending people in? So what do you do as a workforce? Rapid intervention isn't rapid. And with these stats, okay, right here, this is where I'm going to get into my 2 in, 2 out. 2 in, 2 out is a joke. Because 2 firefighters, what capability do they have to rescue a down firefighter? You send 2 two in, out, you're going to have more Maydays, I guarantee it. It takes 12 to rescue. We got 2 out. It doesn't work. Do you guys know the history of 2 in, 2 out? Are you familiar with the NFPA standard 1710? 1710 was a huge standard on both ends, and my dad was the chairman of 1710. The fire chiefs wanted it, the union wanted it to mandate minimum staffing. 2, are you guys familiar with the ICMA? The International City Managers Association. What is their goal for the fire service? Slash and bash, isn't it? We just had one of the worst recessions in the history of our nation. What is the motto of a city manager? Never waste a good recession. Yes. Is it? They have, we do FDIC in April. It's our big conference. Well, the ICMA has their big conference too. So, FDIC, they have the general stuff, and they have this list of all the breakout classes. Well, they have breakout classes for the city managers, how to rape and pillage your local fire department. Don't waste a good recession. Are they after us? Do they tolerate the cops because they're crime and people fear crime? They don't fear the fire department, so it's easy for them to hash and bash us. So, what is the goal of 1710? to take to these bodies and say, we have a consensus standard that says we have to have a minimum of 4-person staffing, so that you guys will finally start hiring the people to keep us safe on the fire department. That was the ultimate goal of it, wasn't it? So the first vote is, they do a new standard, it has to be ratified. And all the membership of the NFPA has to vote whether it's a good standard or not. So the first vote was in New Orleans in like 1996. What happened to it?
Beat is smashed.
Crashed and burned. Who showed up and voted it down? The volunteers. They said, if you guys pass this, you're putting the volunteer fire service out of business. We're going to be non-compliant, and everybody in the world's going to sue us. It's just going to be easier not to be a volunteer firefighter. So what did they do to fix that one? 1720. So it was 2 years later, they had 1710, 1720 in Anaheim, where in mass, even the volunteers showed up, and they voted in 1710 and 1720. What did they do in between those 2 years? They went to OSHA and says, this thing just got submerged by the volunteers, so what we want you to do is we want you to mandate through OSHA law that we have to have 2 firefighters out and 2 firefighters in. That will be the leverage we use as OSHA to make the city managers get us the firefighters that we need to keep us safe. Did they do 2 in, 2 out because there was events happening in our service where we had to have immediate rescue capabilities right at the very beginning? Was there a trend that we were trying to solve with that? And I've had long conversations with my dad about this. There was no trends. That was a purely political move, and God bless him for trying to get us minimum staffing. I'm not knocking that at all. But it was a political move to try to get us minimum staffing. It wasn't a safety thing for us. It wasn't based on, oh, we have all these early tragedies, we have to like remodel our deployments on these. So, we're doing a class. You guys are through the online program? Do you notice how there's really not much 2 in, 2 out in it? As a matter of fact, I don't think there's even those words. Now, if you look at every time engine 1 goes into the building, on our sims, even when you guys are in Phoenix, who's on the scene before you go through the threshold? Ladder 1. So you got 2 out in all of our scenarios, so we're compliant. But I'm doing a class, and we had some East Coasters there that were not very happy. And they started quoting to me NFPA standards and 2 in, 2 out, and how drastically you failed us, and what are we doing here? So, everybody raise your hand who's 100% OSHA NFPA compliant. Oh, so that was I asked the class. I said, pick your poison, right? Pick your poison. No one's going to ever be NFPA compliant. But Tim Schabel, where's Rick, the other Rick?
He's not here today.
He's bald. That's why I use Rick. But Rick is a very attractive bald man. And he sounds like an airline pilot on the radio. Didn't he? Oh, he was a smooth operator. Tim Schabel, he's not as bald as Rick. He had a little hair, you know, the little horseshoe around his head. But after that day with the East Coast guys, Tim's hair was messy. Hard for a bald guy to have messy hair. That's how badly these guys frustrated us. So, anybody know Don Abbott? Abbottville? He did all the dioramas with the models, and he went around the country, he did all his command, line of duty, death reviews. He's the guy that my dad hired to be the manager, facility manager of our CTC. He's a walking encyclopedia. He was on every NFPA committee ever created. He loved surveys, so he'd make surveys and he sent them out to everybody. He loved crunching data. So it's after this class, I call up Don Abbott, the man, the walking fire service encyclopedia, and I say, Don Abbott, has 2 in, 2 out. Has the 2 out firefighters ever made a physical rescue in a hazard zone? In 16 years. What'd he say? No. He says, it's not that is officially validated. So what's my next question to him?
Why are we doing it?
No one's done one. I said, okay, has any 2 out firefighter on a Mayday gone in and been killed trying to make a rescue? This one right here. Right off the bat of his head, he names the cities of 6 or 7 different fire departments, and he says, I know there's more. We narrowed it down to 10 or 12. where 2 in, 2 out firefighters go in on a Mayday, and they ended up dying themselves. What Maydays happen to us in the very beginning of the event that we have to have 2 in, 2 out for? We first get there. They're usually catastrophic things, aren't they? Because we didn't what?
You can say that.
We didn't do a good size up, and then we engage a problem that we're not really know the extent of it, and all of a sudden, very early on, it kills us because we engaged something that was too much for that company. Basements. I'm the training chief of Clay Fires, right north of South Bend, Indiana. We protect the north end of the Notre Dame campus, all the way to the Michigan border. Basement land. You show up, you drag your line in through the front door, didn't do a 360, you got a basement fire, unfinished basement, you fall into the, when you fall into a basement fire, you're falling into what? A chimney, a volcano, they die. Mayday, mayday, mayday. What are the 2 firefighters going to do outside for that? Can they overcome that person not doing a 360 and figuring out there's a basement fire? So there are tragic maydays that happen in the usually in the early on in our events. So they've never saved a firefighter. And over the 15, 16 years that that's been a national law through OSHA, it's actually killed 10 to 12 firefighters trying to make a rescue. Does it sound like a very good assignment to you, being 2 out? And if you look at the capabilities of 2 people to rescue a firefighter in trouble, that's anything past minor, they have no capability. Also, have you guys seen all the NIST-UL stuff? Unfortunately so. See, this is the A group. You guys don't like UL and NIST, do you? Well, if you look at fire dynamics and modern fire behavior, what is our window of opportunity when we get there? It's the biggest, right? When we first get there is our best opportunity to control that. And then what does the window do as that incident keeps going? Smaller, smaller. As it gets smaller, does it make it safer or more unsafe? So I really like a rule that says, okay, stay out here, don't engage the problem. When you have your best opportunity, let's make it more unsafe before we put water on the fire. I work for this wacko, Captain Markov, who was the pit bull. And I was driving for him. Whenever I wasn't using my pump, I would always jump off, put my turnouts on. Well, we get this fire, well, I actually have a hand line. It like happened to me twice as an engineer. So we're going to the house, I get to the hallway, it's coming out of a bedroom, and it's starting to roll over pretty good in the hallway. And I'm about ready to open the bail of the nozzle, and what does my company officer do?
Wait.
He jumps on me, and he keeps me like, he says, don't put water on it, let's just look at it. You got the cow belly. Oh, okay. Let's make it worse for us. So finally, after it's like melting our helmet shields, he says, okay, you can open the line because I think we're going to die right now. Isn't that our mentality? So if you look at 2 in, 2 out, it's ridiculous actually. And poor state of Washington. I had dinner last night with Pat Dale. You guys know Pat Dale? We talked about the Washington State Fire Marshal. And it's not the fire marshal, it's the labor and industry is the one that watchdogs, labor and industry. Are there any really qualified people to beef up the 2 in, 2 out rule in that committee? So you got people who are not professional firefighters who are institutionalized unsafe practices on us who have no clue what we're doing. Also, if you look at the national OSHA law, it does not say what the Washington State OSHA law says. It says that there's a likelihood that there's somebody trapped in that house, that you can engage the fire. Well, to me, when I hear likelihood, what setting do I get to go in and put the fire out? Oh, residential. Houses, apartments, there's a high likelihood that there's human beings in those. How about a strip mall? They're all evacuated. 3 o'clock in the morning, am I worried about an all clear? No, I am going to take my time and I'm going to build up some resources before I engage that. But on a house fire, if it was my house, 2 firefighters just burning, and they're standing out there in the front yard waiting for somebody else, what am I going to say to them? What are you doing, man? Get in there. Put that out. My kids could be in there. I got a dog. Stop it! It's maddening. It's maddening. And especially when you look at this, there's 12 firefighters, 21 minutes. What are 2 firefighters gonna do? They're gonna kill themselves, and that's what the stats are showing us. But Pat and I are putting a coalition together to do a march. The victims, usually we get 4 or 5 drills out of one victim. But this particular person right here, his name's Ray Gasper. He was going through a messy divorce. So he was the victim like 60 times through these drill sets. So we decided it was the last drill, we were finally done with this, we were gonna interview Ray, the guy who was the victim the most. And Ray shed a lot of light on it for us.
Okay, Ray, how many times have you been a victim here at the drills?
This month, probably 8 or 9 times.
Oh, so you've done a lot.
Yeah.
What, how have you been doing what's it like being in there waiting for the crews to come in there to save you? Is that pretty interesting? What are you thinking about?
It's pretty sobering if you're on a live incident and you got lost and trapped or hurt, and you were lying there waiting for crews to come in and pull you out. It's a long way. It's a long way. It's pretty sobering, and they're moving fast in here. They're moving fast. The building's not that big. There's no real heat. There's no real smoke. So it's pretty sobering. You're in there for a long time.
How have you run out of air before they got to you?
Yeah.
How long were you without air then?
There was probably 2 times where I ran out of air for 3 or 4 minutes before crews ever found me. But we don't start with a full bottle, so.
Which is realistic.
Which is realistic, yeah. And there were times when I'd probably spend, a total of maybe 5 or 10 minutes without air. And I'd actually have to pull my mask away from my face in order to actually breathe.
So the crews, when they get to you, are they taking a long time to hook up and buddy?
It sounds a lot easier than it actually is. And it takes a long time you're blacked out, so it takes a long time to figure out what you're dealing with, to get your transfilled, to make sure your mask is on your face, to get the rescue loops on you properly. It takes a lot of communication, and it takes a lot longer than you would anticipate.
So the crews which ones are the most successful at doing all those things?
The ones that are most successful are the ones who have talked about it and who have very specific tasks to perform once they find the downed firefighter. You have an airway, you have a transfill man, you have a rescue loop guy, you have regulator guy, you have air checking guy. Everybody has a real specific task to do, and spread out among the whole crew. And they go in and they do it in a real specific order, and it goes a lot smoother and a lot faster.
So if you were hurt in that fire or down and they're pulling you out, would they get you out alive, or do you think they're beating you up?
You know what? If you take one thing away from this drill, it's do not get lost in a fire, because you're in a bad situation.
Just a difficult task.
Oh yeah.
Very hard.
It's real hard to get somebody out. It takes a long time, and it takes a lot of people. And if you're in fact out of air in a building like that, your chances of survival are almost 0, I would think.
Don't run out of air.
Don't run out of air. Don't get lost.
All right. Great, Rick.
You never really answered the question, did he?
I take a little exception to the fact that we're 2 in, 2 out. The purpose of the 2 out is to initiate a rescue, not necessarily perform the rescue, but to initiate. And like he said, those first crew's got to find him and get the air thing going. So,
Is there an air issue though in a very early Mayday with 2 out?
there could be, but not running out of air, maybe a catastrophic event
Yeah,
in the mask, but yeah, but typically not. But locating that downed firefighter is probably the most important task to do. We need to send the rabbits in to find, and then so the hounds can then track them with the appropriate resources. So, it's not perfect.
But what is, if you look at 2 out, especially when we first get there, before we start reinforcing it with the later arrivals, what does the law say? One person has to be fully protected, ready to go. The second person. They can have another job, responsibility, pump operator IC, and they have to have their PPE ready to go. So tell me what it looks like in the beginning when somebody says Mayday. You got that firefighter in the front yard standing there and somebody else over here not in PPE trying to engage. The law actually sets us up to kill ourselves, doesn't it? Because what's the firefighter going to do when they hear Mayday? What's the person who has the other job responsibility going to do? Wait for me, isn't it? It sets us up to kill ourselves. And in Phoenix, we had 4-person staffing. The law was implemented to get 4-person staffing. We already had it, and then we had to do it. What did it do to our initial attack? It totally crippled it. So we had been going, and everything was working fine, and they give us this law. Our workforce figured out really quick that it was crippling the initial attack and it was making it more unsafe for us. The fires were getting bigger. In order to do it, it was taking too long to put water on the fire. So what did we start doing on the radio? We had to say it on the radio. We called it IRIC. Immediate Rapid Intervention Crew was 2 out. So what did the company officers say? IRIC in place, and then we'd go in. We didn't, and the company officers, in the front yard, they're doing their huddle. Hey, we're not following this rule anymore. Just say it on the radio, make them happy, and let's put water on the fire. Because if you look at the law, 2 out firefighters ready to go is a good thing. But the way that the OSHA law is written, that first in wave, man, they are terribly exposed if there's a mayday. And that's just, we write stuff down on a piece of paper in our service, and it looks good on paper, and we don't put it to the test. And then we implement it. And that's what we were doing through this whole process, is we've put all of this to the test and say, hey, let's figure this out, man. Because we're in fantasy land until we put it to the test. These drills, those numbers, we went out in the country and we were showing this. What were people saying on the 21 minute? They said, no way, man. You guys are no wonder the Southwest happened to you. We said, okay, you guys, here's our matrix, here's our drill thing, the overview of it. You do it, it'll give us more numbers. It was Fort Lauderdale, Texas, and I think Seattle started doing it. Well, Seattle, when they got into it, they were doing some of the preliminary drills just to get the thing going. They recognized that they needed to fix a lot of other stuff before they did these drills. We've got to do some hands-on training. We got to invest in that before we do these massive Mayday drills. Fort Worth did them, and Don Abbott, he kept calling. We didn't hear back from him. Finally, Fort Lauderdale called back. They said, how'd it go? What'd they say? Our numbers weren't as good as yours. They were almost double. They were 35, 40 minutes, and then they were using more resources to get those people out of the building. Ours was 12, theirs was like 20.
So, two-part question. The first one is the 3D deployment fix that for Phoenix? And if it hasn't fixed that for Phoenix, what do you do to overcome that lack of people that you need to get them?
Don't engage in something that's going to kill you. Do an effective size up. Say it over the radio. We have a routine that we have to go through before we can enter the threshold. And we call it initial radio report and a follow-up report. Actually, if you combine those two, it's a situational report, not only for you, but for the whole response coming in there. I've thoroughly sized it. You have to say 8 things on the radio before you're allowed to go through the threshold. Don't engage something that's going to kill you. 2 in, 2 out was not created because we were killing ourselves early on in the incident. It was a political move to try to get us the staffing that we needed. So, well, Fort Lauderdale, why was our times half of theirs? Because we practiced it for 2 years. I mean, Tarver died. We were ashamed of ourselves. We couldn't get them out of the building. We overestimated our capabilities. So we got down to 21 minutes because we were busting our asses trying to save Tarver. These guys, they didn't have the investment in the front end. They were doing these drills, and we grossly overestimate our capabilities. It was in Ohio. They had a firefighter die of a heart attack in the basement. They had the fire out. He's down there. They did a quick hit from the outside. So when they went down in the basement, it was pretty well controlled. This guy was 350 pounds. coronary men dropped dead right there. There's no way to revive them. How long did it take them to get out of the basement? 50 minutes, because the basement stairs curved. If it was a straight shot, it would have taken probably half the time. But they said that they dropped them on the curve. And you go back down. So, I don't like, you heard Ray right there. If you go down a fire and you're down and you're getting out of air, our capabilities coming in there. Ray, I asked him after the camera start, did they ever save you, Ray? He said, I never got saved. He was the number one, 60 times he did it. They never ever saved Ray. If he was out of air or down so hard, he was dead. We don't think that way though, do we? We think, oh, FDIC, I got a coin, I was an instructor there, and they have a person that's got a firefighter on their shoulder that's taking them out of the building. And the caption underneath it says, I knew you'd come. Does somebody look at that and think that that could really happen? Does it? Yeah, I'm just going to pick them up and throw them on my shoulder and we'll run out of here. Well, we tried that. It didn't work. So, we as senior staff, we sit down. It was the first meeting we had in our CTC. It was about 3 or 4 months before it opened. So what do we do, man? How do we protect firefighters in a hazard zone? So we got to have, it's totally dependent on effective size up and managing their air supply. There's offensive maydays and there's defensive maydays. Defensive maydays occur where offensive positions under defensive conditions. And if you get a mayday under those conditions, they're usually severe in scope and nature, aren't they? And they're very hard to recover from because it's defensive. Now you're putting all the rescue workers at high risk because they're in an environment. Well, you saw the Tarver fire. So if you have an offensive mayday, you're in the right strategy. What are offensive maydays?
Disoriented.
Entangled. Maybe they had a heart attack, they broke their leg, they had an interior structural collapse, like shelving came down, knocked them. Can you recover from those? And because they're offensive, does that give you the time, the 21 minutes? Yeah, so if you do a good size up and you manage your air supplies, you're going to eliminate about 98% of your maydays. Do we have a very hazardous job? Are we going to get sucker punched once in a while? I mean, we can't see all of it, but you look at a lot of line of duty deaths, and what do we say when we look at it? Like, I know I said, what are they doing? You know? And it's the mentality of the saving our own training. We feel that we can go in and conquer all, and nothing's going to kill us.
That's a question real quick. So that's kind of, it seems like a strong term, totally, that the survivability in the hazard is totally dependent on only those two things. When you see like strong training, company ops, things like that, being familiar with building construction, fire behavior, things like that, keeps you from, that's going to increase your survivability in the hazard zone. I mean, I understand.
I agree 100%, but all of those culminate right there, don't they?
To air supply and size up.
To doing all of my task level skills, my command management skills, my air management discipline, that all comes together right there in the front of that, doesn't it?
Size up an air supply.
If I size it up wrong, could I have all of the task level skills in the world? Superman on like the grand champion firefighter, and I didn't size it up, it's still going to kill me?
Sure, and those are two, it seems like very important things, but it seems like there's more to it than just those two things.
And that's the Gordon Graham deal, isn't it? Because Gordon Graham says, people look at the cursing event that actually killed the firefighter. What fell through the basement, that's what killed him. But if you look back at the training, the department culture, all of those things, is that the Tarver fire. All of those things that we were doing wrong, it wasn't a grocery store attic fire it was all of our other organizational mistakes that came together on that one thing. So to say, well, Tarver died because the attic flashed. Tarver died because of just what you said. Skill level, size up, command and control. All of that stuff came together and killed us. But you have to have all of those things. And as a service, we love Band-Aids, don't we? I'm going to buy this and it's going to fix all my problems. You have to start exactly where you said. I'm going to fix my problems by having strong SOPs to start out with. I'm going to have strong training to train my folks to those SOPs. So when you start fixing yourself on the back end, what does it do to the front end when you go deliver service? It keeps you safer, exactly what you said. But now I've done all that, and now I get to a fire. This is really, because I'm coming qualified. But now I got to do this to keep the qualified people safe, don't I? But you have got, that is part of our problems. We got to have SOPs, the training, the reinforcement, the certification, the recertification to keep our workforce current. But when we get to a fire, I'm bringing all that with me. This is what's going to keep those people safe, along with their skill level and all the other, the institutional things that I need to protect my workforce. UPS, you guys look, they have one of the lowest liabilities in the delivery system on the planet because they have strong policies, SOPs, and they train their employees. How about what's DHL? They're the worst because they don't have what? Strong policies, they don't train their people the way they need to train them. So when they're delivering a package, they don't have what you just said, I got to come out of the barn with a certain set of things behind me. And that's our base. And then when we get started to deliver the packages, we need it. So now I got to actually do it. So I'm put my people that have a high skill level, they have the highest skill level in the world. Phoenix Fire Department. We didn't have very good size up, did we? Did we manage our air supplies very well? The most highly capable firefighters on the planet killed them because of these two things. And if you look at most offensive firefighting guys, that's what it is. So we said, okay, this is how we're going to manage. Our deal is, you guys, the rescue alibi, we got to get in and do all clear, search everything. That was our deal, man. We got to get in and get it all clear. Well, we had a plan to get in and get it all clear, but we never had a plan to get out. So we started talking to our company officers and says, you go in, you got to have a plan to come out. So you can't go in that far because the further you go in, the further your air supply is. So we're going to control your entry depths, and you have to have a plan to get your firefighters out of that building because before all we had was a plan on getting them in. Air management became a huge deal. Everybody was trained to run out of air in a burning building. And in 2001, did anybody talk about air management or entry control? No, and now it's become the hot topic. We said we needed 25 air